Good afternoon. My name is Chris Konetsky, and I'm the group publisher for Business Publications Corporation, which publishes the Business Record. First, I want to thank you. It's great to have leaders from all across the state here with us today for our fourth Made in Iowa Manufacturing Forecast, which we know is going to help you get an inside look at how this industry is adapting, it's changing, and what the economic forecast is for the largest industry in the state. It's our goal to help you do business better, and you all are the reason that we do what we do. And I know we've got a great panel lined up for you. Before we get to our program, I do want to introduce the sponsors that are helping power today's event. Our presenting sponsor for today's event is the Iowa Association of Business and Industry. Not only did ABI jump on board to partner with us during the middle of the pandemic in 2020 to help launch this event and drive this important conversation, but it is also helping support our Made in Iowa effort once again this year. As part of that effort, we're teaming up once again to elevate Manufacturing Month. In fact, the September 29th issue of the Business Record is going to be a complete manufacturing takeover of the issue. It's going to feature stories and content specific to the industry, and we'll be providing manufacturers the opportunity to showcase the amazing things that are built right here in the state. Then all October long for Manufacturing Month, the Business Record in partnership with ABI is going to be highlighting those manufacturers on our social platforms in an effort to help elevate the importance of the industry to the state. If you're interested in being featured in that issue, you can reach out directly to me, or you can learn more at madeiniowa.com/advertise. There'll be a little link in the chat that you can check out. If you're interested in being featured there, feel free to reach that. There's a little form, you can fill it out, and we'll be in touch. And of course, ABI is at the heart of supporting the manufacturing industry, along with other large businesses across the state. ABI has done an amazing job helping its member businesses navigate the past few years and the many years before, and then years to come after this. They're always helping businesses adapt to the ever-changing landscape of the industry while continuing to advocate for their members. Here to tell you a little bit more about what ABI is up to and how they're helping the industry is Mike Ralston, president of ABI. Mike, welcome.
Hey, Chris, thank you. And thank you very much to you and the Business Record team for your focus on manufacturing. We're biased, but we think it's pretty important. It's certainly a very important part of Iowa's economy. And again, we're grateful to you and the Business Record. We appreciate our partnership and again, appreciate your focus on manufacturing. We're grateful to everyone who's joining this Zoom today. We think you're in store for a great panel. Some folks who really will share great information about manufacturing and what Iowa manufacturing is all about. I'm supposed to tell you a little bit about ABI. I promise I'm going to be quick. The Iowa Association of Business and Industry is Iowa's manufacturing and general business trade association. ABI was formed 120 years ago, and ever since then, all we've done is advocate and provide value for Iowa manufacturers and other businesses. We have a focus on manufacturing, but we have all kinds of businesses involved: utilities, warehousing, distribution, financial services, insurance, you name it, we've got it. But I want to tell you a little bit about what we do. Everybody knows ABI is number one when it comes to public policy advocacy. We do a lot of training and events for Iowa manufacturers and for general businesses. We do a lot of stuff around workforce. We have an Elevate Iowa website that will provide great information for you and for your potential workforce. We do a lot of work when it comes to working with students and their parents to make sure they know that they can have a great career in manufacturing. I want to tell you about two events coming up. One, we're doing an automation summit in Newton on August 31st. Des Moines Area Community College and Ciras, you're going to hear more from Michael Donnell later, our partners on that. And then our manufacturing conference will be October 4th at the FFA Center in Ankeny, and we hope you'll take a look at both those things. We do a ton of other things. That's not what we're here to talk about. I want to make sure you get to this panel. So thanks again to all of you who are on the Zoom. And Chris, thanks again to you and the Business Record for all you do.
Well, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. And thanks again for your sponsorship and helping power this event and the coverage of the course of this event that's going to be across all of our products as well. So thank you for doing that and helping us elevate the great industry of manufacturing. Next, I'd like to introduce a new supporting sponsor for the event, McKee, Voorhees & Cease. McKee, Voorhees & Cease is a leading firm specializing in intellectual property law since 1924. With the ever-changing and evolving landscape in the manufacturing sector, and of course, a new reliance on more and more digital technology, MVS help their clients navigate through all of that with confidence. The team is of advanced manufacturing attorneys are not only equipped with degrees related to the fields of work which they practice, but more importantly, real-world manufacturing experience to be able to offer their clients a full spectrum of support. I'd like to welcome Kirk Hertung, partner and member of the MVS Mechanical Electrical Practice Group, to tell you a little bit more about their work.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome everybody to this interesting and timely forecast event. Again, my name is Kirk Hartone. Our law firm is pleased to be the supporting sponsor of this event, and we look forward to the discussions that will be taking place over the next hour. I'm a partner here at McKee, Voorhees & Cease and have been practicing here for 41 years as a patent attorney. We're located in Des Moines, and we specialize in all aspects of intellectual property. It's been our privilege to work with many Iowa manufacturers for 99 years in protecting their innovations and intellectual property. We prosecute patents, trademarks, and copyrights. We do IP litigation. We do IP licensing. We also handle regulatory issues with various government agencies, as well as data security issues. Advanced manufacturing plays an important role in Iowa by providing companies the necessary tools needed to compete across the global landscape. And these new technologies, the evolving products, improved processes, and the like create many opportunities for our clients in the changing sectors. MBS, we act as strategic advisors to the manufacturers nationwide, and we navigate this increasingly complex legal landscape to protect and manage many important innovations. Manufacturers of all sizes, from startups to market-leading businesses, turn to MBS to assist with patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, licensing, regulatory, and all various related litigation issues. Our 21 attorneys and patent agents leverage our IP experience across many and a wide range of industries. And we have college degrees in engineering, life sciences, chemistry, and pharmacy to assess all facets of our clients' technologies. Again, it's our privilege to partner with the manufacturers of Iowa and across the country in protecting your valuable intellectual property and intangible assets. It is your company's investments in time, talent, and resources that make Iowa a leading manufacturer for the economic growth of our state, for your employees, and for the future of our state. McKee, Voorhees & Cease is proud to be part of these efforts and be part of your teams. We thank you for joining us today, and please enjoy this event and the speakers. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kirk. Appreciate your continued sponsorship of this event, just like you did last year. We appreciate that. Thank you to all our sponsors for supporting today's event, but not only today's event, but the manufacturing industry as a whole. All right, let's dive in. Here's how it's going to work today. In a moment, we're going to ask a few questions to get things going, but you all have a role to play as well. You'll see down there, you've got the chat function that allows you to ask some questions as well. Michael and I will be monitoring that throughout the course of today's discussion to see if we can work some of those questions in there. The panelists know to be looking there as well. So if you've got a question, something you'd like us to address, please feel free to use that. To get yourself a little bit warmed up, please give the panelists a nice welcome if you could in the chat. They're here today to help you understand what's coming down the pipeline, and we're grateful for their attendance and participation as well. We've got only about an hour or so here to really scratch the surface of today's conversation, and to kick things off, I want to introduce Michael Crum, one of our senior staff writers, who's going to be helping moderate the event today. Michael, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, everyone who's listening in today. We are going to be touching on a variety of topics that will be affecting the manufacturing sector, not only here in Iowa, but really across the country. And as we have witnessed over the past few years, the manufacturing industry is innovative and nimble, especially during times of rapid change and extreme uncertainty. And as the industry that hosts our state's largest sector, we often look to the manufacturing industry to pave the way and set the tone for what's to come. But while leading the pack, this means you're often the first to encounter the challenges that face our business community and ultimately have effects down the line. As labor challenges, inflation, and supply issues continue to affect production and efficiency, we'll talk today about how the industry is adapting and what the forecast is for the industry as concerns about recession continue. Today's panel will talk us through some of their thoughts on those topics and also give some insights into what's to come. And although today's panelists are experts in their field, let's give them a little grace and latitude as they offer up their best forecasting for the future. Let's go ahead and introduce our panelists. Joining us today are Megan Green, Counsel and Engineering Manager with Weiler, Dereck Lewis, the founder and president of Thelma Treats, Mike O'Donnell, the director of Ciras at Iowa State University, Laura Phillips, the vice president of engineering at Pella Corp, and Tom Root, a associate professor of finance and economics at Drake University. So to get things started, we always like to ask kind of a general question, and we're going to get right into the theme of the event, which is forecasting. And we're going to ask each panelist to give us one challenge that they think that either the manufacturing sector in general, or maybe their company or organization specifically will face in 2024. And also if they could just touch a little bit on what strategies are they employing to address it. Let's go ahead and start with Laura first. Laura, thanks for joining us today. If you'd like to address that question about a challenge and a strategy.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's truly an honor to be here. We're going to talk a lot about labor today, and so I was going to go a little bit in a different direction and just mention the aggressive change that we're seeing on the technology front. Gosh, if you look at the last 5 to 10 years to today, we're in a dramatically different place in regards to the technology demands of the organization to both drive improved efficiency, operating efficiency for us, and also really to help us make the work easier for our team members so that we can attract and retain. And so technology is a big focus area for Pella Corporation. One of the strategies we're deploying is putting a lot of investment in this area, both in developing technical talent, attracting, retaining, and developing technical talent with the specialized skills needed in this area, and then really initiating large technology advancement, digitization, and automation initiatives within the organization. So thanks for the question.
And Dereck, why don't we have you offer your thoughts on that for Thelma's moving forward? What's the challenge, and how are you addressing that challenge moving forward?
Sure. Thanks everybody for having me. This is kind of fun to be here with all these giant companies too. We were at the farmers market 10 years ago, and we're just a little manufacturer here in Des Moines. So it's just kind of a little bit different angle. But one of the things that we're really focusing on is how the economy is going to impact consumer trends. Not just are they willing to pay for this, but are they not going to a restaurant or Dairy Queen and now they're buying our item at the grocery store, for example. And then aligning that with our manufacturing output. And so it's really hard to predict what a consumer is going to do. So then how do we mitigate that at the manufacturing level? I think some of the things that we're doing to protect against that is shoring up some of the disruptive ingredients that we had trouble with the supply chain, which I know everyone is doing, but minimizing our finished goods inventory and optimizing on those things that are a challenge for us, like eggs and chocolate and things like that. So yeah, those are kind of the things that we see that we're really focused on and how we're going to mitigate against that.
Mike O'Donnell, let's bring you into the conversation. You're going to offer a slightly different perspective, but what challenges do you think the sector is facing in 2024?
So stepping back and thinking broadly, I think the big challenge for manufacturers as we get into 2024 is kind of rebalancing their business, stepping back and realizing that over the last 4 or 5 years, a lot has changed, some of it for the very good and some of it not necessarily for the very good. So stepping back and comparing, looking at your headcount, your costs, your product mix from 2019 to today, and seeing what's different and making sure you're identifying and leveraging those big positive changes and fixing the ones that you really weren't expecting to see. So I think that's the big challenge, and one way to look at it is to kind of re-baseline your business and get ready for whatever's next.
Megan, thanks for joining us today. For Weiler, what do you see as a big challenge in 2024, and what is the company looking at to address that challenge?
Sure, thank you for having me. I'm glad Laura left the door open for workforce, because I'm gonna take that one. Workforce continues to be a big issue for us, and our demand remains strong, which is great news, but we have to have the people that we need to be able to turn out that demand and meet our customers' expectations. One of the primary concerns that we have is less on the workforce for Weiler, but on the workforce for our supply chain. That is the number one concern that we are hearing from people down the supply chain from us, which some of the strategies that we have undergone to address that is bringing in-house some of the things that we have historically outsourced. In fact, this new building right over my shoulder here just finished about 6 months ago to insource a great deal of the outsourcing that we had done. And yeah, we're hopeful to continue some of those strategies. We have also really doubled down on employee benefits and offering alternate work arrangements for our employees, some 4x10 and 3x12 work shifts that are popular among employees. It was kind of on an experimental basis, but we have made that a little bit more permanent recently and are getting good feedback on that as well. So hopefully that will make a difference. Every little bit helps.
Megan, I'd like to kind of interrupt things here just a bit for just a second. I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about Weiler, about what Weiler does.
Sure. So we are a heavy equipment manufacturer. We manufacture equipment primarily for the asphalt paving industry, but we also make drilling and forestry equipment. So we do everything from design to manufacturing. Based in Knoxville, Iowa. We've got about 615 employees here.
Right, very good. And Tom, let's bring you into the conversation. Really, economically speaking, what do you think will be a challenge that the manufacturing sector will be facing as we turn the calendar into a new year?
Yeah, thanks, Michael, and thanks for having me on today. I think that the biggest thing looking forward is the thing we're all questioning, and you brought up earlier, is that probability of recession, and what's that going to mean for demand variability? And that's going to vary dramatically across the different types of firms that we look at. If you look at Thelma's and thinking about the individual consumer, their view of that's much different than Pella, thinking about home builders and people like that, and also the construction industry for Megan. So that's going to be the big difference, is how do we manage that, and what does that look like? Looking at that idea going forward, even though we've seen a lot of talk lately about a soft landing, if you look at the New York Fed, they are still putting the chance of a recession in the next 12 months at over 60%. It's actually at 66%. So that implies some sort of slowdown that people are probably going to have to deal with. And we're seeing the beginning of that slowdown when we look at the industry now. When we look at manufacturing, we're starting to see that. A lot of the numbers are showing a slowdown both locally and nationally. So I think that's going to be the biggest question.
So Tom, I'm going to bring you back for the next question, and really it does address specifically inflation and optimism moving forward, and the chances of that soft landing or even a recession coming around the corner. What data are you looking at to maybe provide some insights into whether or not we'll actually slip into recession or not?
Wow, that's a tough question. But absolutely, in terms of data, it's really following all the different pieces of the economy going forward, and focus on manufacturing here. If you look at, for example, the PMI manufacturing index, and looking at that broadly, and first off, it is a national survey. So the first thing I want to say is when you look at Iowa versus national, we track very well with the national overall with manufacturing in terms of ups and downs. But looking at that survey, what we see is it's in contraction and has been for 8 months in terms of the industry. So the response of the people coming into the survey are basically saying that we have a slowdown in the overall economy. They see a slowdown in new orders. They see a slowdown in the backlog of orders. And so less backlog in terms of that, in terms of orders coming up. And all those things point towards what we expect is that slow kind of contracting. That doesn't mean that it's recession. It means that it's just kind of soft. It's not going as fast as it was. By comparison, Chicago does the Chicago Fed does a nice regional district survey, and looking at it, it actually is a little bit less optimistic than the national survey was. Looking at manufacturing versus non-manufacturing, their index has a negative number on it. It's kind of a weird way to think about it, but it really comes into what percentage of respondents are saying that they're doing less business than they were in the past, and they track where they were in the past. Manufacturing had a very negative number, and it didn't change much in the last month, where non-manufacturing sector bumped back up, even though it was still negative in terms of a slowdown. So I think most of that sentiment idea and most of that idea of current capacity, current utilization in the industry is showing at least a weakness or a softness, which mirrors kind of what we're seeing in the broad economy.
All right, thank you, Tom. We're going to continue that conversation about fears of inflation and what companies are doing to really navigate those waters. Laura, as far as Pella, how are you viewing this moving forward, and what are you doing to kind of navigate these waters in the months to come?
Yeah, thanks for the question. In 2023, at least for the primary commodities that Pella uses in our products, when you think glass, aluminum, wood, vinyl, we're in a much more stable and predictable place this year than we were last year. So that feels positive, right? We're not fully to pre-pandemic levels. So certainly are working on cost reduction and efficiency measures, optimization measures to offset inflation pressures, primarily coming from labor and the need for improved wages and benefits to support the labor force. So for us, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, some headwinds and tailwinds, but we do feel like we're in a much better place this year than we were last year. And we're also predicting that as we move into 2024, we're going to maintain being in that more stable place.
And Dereck, how is Thelma navigating these waters with this continued fear of recession heading into 2024?
Couple of things. So we really like to get in the field, in the stores, and see what's happening and talk to managers. Data is great, and we look at that and watch that, but sometimes the data is lagging or it's misrepresenting what's going on. And so we have a pretty robust sales team that's out in the field, whether it's in Houston, Chicago, Minneapolis, just talking to managers and seeing what they're seeing, or out in there every day in the aisle. Also listening to some of our buyers who are at the corporate level, who are, we're completely aligned with them on our concerns. And so how can we work together to set strategies ahead of that to mitigate? On the labor side, we have a much smaller team than everybody else on the panel here at Thelma's. And so, but it's no less important to us. And so it's what are the maybe even non-monetary things as a smaller company we can do to increase engagement. So that's all the soft stuff. It's having a food truck on Thursdays or donut day, or those kind of little things that we can do to make people feel even more connected to us and feel part of the family here. So that we have had one turnover in the last 12 months of a person, which I know we're small, and I know but as a ratio, that's still something we like to hang our hat on, that we're curating a culture here of people really feeling like they're part of something.
Megan, how's Weiler viewing this and kind of making the needed adjustments as you move forward?
I would agree with Laura. Our components are more stable than they were, but stability doesn't mean cheaper than before. It's just the maybe supply chain surcharges that we were seeing are now baked into the price of the goods. Or instead of seeing maybe 4 price increases throughout the year that were 1 to 2 to 3%, now it's 10%, but all at once. Or we're seeing expedite surcharges a lot more, freight surcharges, gas surcharges, anything that they can kind of think of, not in a way to necessarily, I don't feel that they're nickel and diming us. They're just trying to figure out how they're going to protect, right, their profit margin on some of these things. I mean, I get it. We're all trying to run a business. But it does make it a little bit hard to know what your price is going to be. And that was our primary concern in 2021 and 2022, was all of these surcharges made it difficult to know when that product actually arrived at your dock, how much it was actually going to cost you. which then makes it difficult for you to price your product. So now we have a little bit more stability and consistency, but those prices are just high and we don't see them going backwards in any way. Something else that has been a recent trend that is concerning for us is our vendors who are delivering early. And that's something that we were kind of, we thought it might be a one-off thing, but it has not been a one-off thing. And that's a concern for us for a couple of different reasons. First of all, we, give them a schedule that we expect them to meet. For the last 3 years, we've dealt with, why can't you meet this schedule? Why is it 3 months late, 6 months late, 9 months late? But now when it shows up early, first of all, of course, when they deliver it early, they want to pay for it early. Second of all, we have to store it someplace. And that kind of messes with our whole flow and process. So, and oftentimes the vendors are not asking, can we ship this early? Do you want this early? It's just showing up early. So I think that might be an indicator of pressures that they are under. We are not in the supply chain, and it's something that we're really watching closely because we want to make sure, obviously, that our supply chain partners are healthy and they're not under any financial strain, but also to figure out how to deal with these shipments of oftentimes large pieces of equipment that show up that we want to prepare for.
And Mike, why don't you offer your thoughts on this question? I'm
Yeah,
curious what you're thinking.
Yeah, I want to kind of circle back to Tom's points, because I think that's really important. Is I think a lot of people underestimate how much strain manufacturers were on from 2020 through 2022, and how much demand increase and speed requirements increase and people problems there were. And in order for companies to get back to stability and normalcy and running a business like they always have, there had to be a drop. And so we've been seeing small drops for 8 months, right? And we've been seeing, despite those drops, employment continuing to rise, right? So there's some mixed signals in the data now, really realistically for almost a year. And our gut, from what we hear from companies, is what you heard from everybody else today, is that we've kind of found some level of normal. The real question is whether now things are going to flatten or they're going to keep going down or back up. I think that's the thing we're all watching for. And I don't think any of us knows when that's going to happen.
So are any of those issues that you all addressed, how are those affecting plans for capital investment or hiring? Megan, let's circle back with you and have you go first.
Sure. Well, I mentioned we just completed our new building. It's about 120,000 square foot building that we are using for laser cutting of plate steel. Something that we have been outsourcing as we grew. We've grown a lot over the last 25 years that we've been around, and just outgrew our capacity. So we are bringing that all back in-house. Obviously, the gamble on major capital expenditures like that. I mean, when you look at a building that size, you think, wow, that building must be expensive. The building is cheap compared to the stuff that's inside, right? It's, the lasers and all the equipment that goes into that. And then you are cognizant when you're making those investments that the investment is not worthwhile if you don't have a competent and reliable person to run that equipment. And this is not somebody that we can pull in off the street. We need somebody who is willing to dedicate time to learning how to run the equipment, how to make the equipment more efficient, how to reduce downtime on the equipment, all of those things that we are now taking on as internal risks for our company rather than outsourcing those risks. And, obviously outsourcing some of our profit too when we outsource that work to somebody else. So that's been some of the things that we've tried to take on to kind of mitigate that concern. But yeah, it's major capital investments, and we're lucky that we're in a position to be able to make those investments at this time because it feels like the right time to do it. But yeah, time will tell.
Laura, how are these concerns affecting Pella moving forward on things like capital investments and hiring?
Yeah, for sure. So for Pella, we're very tied to the housing industry and how the housing market is doing in particular. And while we've certainly seen softening, many have talked about the softening We do know that the demand for housing continues to be strong, and so we're not expecting it to bottom out. We're expecting a more soft remainder of this year and soft next year, but still strong. And so for us, some of the ways we've been approaching it, big investments in a more robust sales and operations planning process. I think Dereck mentioned that. How do we connect what we believe the demand is going to be with what our capacity and capability is as an organization? So been spending time really investing in advancing that capability. Also focusing more on what we're calling flexible capacity. So think the ability for the system, whether it be the human resources, the materials that we need, so the supply and the equipment that we need, the equipment capacity that we need, creating more flexibility for variation, both up, which we've seen the last couple of years, and down, to create more adaptability for the system as we see that demand volatility.
And Dereck.
So we actually, so I started this business with an ice cream machine that sits on the counter, and we made 6 sandwiches at a time. Over the last 2 years, I've been working on an automation system to be able to put the ice cream onto the cookie, which sounds really simple, but it's actually pretty complicated to do at a high speed. We just brought that line, it came online in March. So it's just new to us, but has provided a pretty incredible increase in quality, increase in efficiency. So we, it was happening in line with just, what things were happening with COVID and all the things that happened, but it was just the nature of our business growth of when it needed to happen. So it kind of happened organically, but has been a really timely enhancement for us to be able to have a smaller labor force, more skilled, higher pay, that sort of thing, which helps with retention and all those sorts of things. So we did that not out of a big level of strategy, but out of demand for the business. And so now what we're doing is responding to the environment to say a little bit of what Laura was talking about, of flexibility. So what other products can we make with this line? We designed it to be flexible. So we can make perhaps like a little bit less expensive product on the same line using the same equipment, but use it for a different application at a different price point for a different consumer trend. And so those are the kind of things that we're focusing on now with both with production and our sales team. Say, how can we respond in the next 12 months with something that kind of fits the market and meets it where it's at?
Hey, Tom, I wonder if you don't have information on this, that's okay. But one of the things that has come up on some of our other economic forecast panels is worker productivity or productivity of businesses. And there's been kind of, if I'm understanding right, a decrease in productivity, and we can talk about worker productivity, how that looks. But I'm curious, when you start seeing examples like what Dereck's talking about, if some of that will eventually start showing up in data where we're looking at worker productivity, and maybe you could dive into that a little bit, and we'll see if we get where I'm hoping to get.
Yeah, I think we have seen a little bit of a pullback there, but I think it comes back to a little bit of what Mike just said. When you think about productivity post-COVID at the beginning, we probably had a bit of a spike there, and people were trying to get caught up and figure out what was going on. So a little bit of a pullback in productivity now makes some sense. But I think that idea of the flexibility that everybody's talking about is really the key for right now. It's that ability to increase quickly or decrease quickly to respond to this kind of real uncertainty of where we're going to be. And I think Mike made a really good point here. When you think about what happened 2020 and then to today, which seems like, hey, 3 years ago, and we talked about the end of the pandemic, which we know really we still have COVID, right? It's not a pandemic, but it was an experiment we've never done before with the economy. We shut down the economy effectively for a short period of time, and that really threw consumerism and the idea of demand and what we want to spend and how we plan to a totally different place. Same thing with business, same thing with the workplace and what you're doing in your job. And so I think all of those things, we're not real sure what that's going to mean. And the Fed's not sure. They won't like to hear that, but they will tell you that if they admit it, about their policies. We've done this fast increase in interest rates trying to tame inflation, and we're seeing good signs of lessening in terms of the inflation picture. But we don't really know those lags, how big of an impact that's going to have. A couple of things on that, since we brought up, and I didn't talk much earlier about inflation. The survey that I was talking about does give a good indication. They ask the people respond, what are you seeing an increase in prices of inputs and in the production process? And electrical components is the only thing that's been on there consistently every month for like the last 9 or 12 months. And so we still have some issues on the electrical side, where all the other inputs you normally would think about, whether it be plastic, resins, or steel, or all those types of things, are not consistently showing up as increasing prices. So that does look like we're getting some traction on that. And that's off the topic from where you were, Chris. Sorry about that. But I think that's part of the productivity, is that same sense of uncertainty about what the future looks like broadly.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Can I want to jump in on that and then ask a question of the other participants to kind of see their feelings. So when we look at productivity in manufacturing from an economic standpoint, it's been mostly flat for 15, 20 years now, right? We made some leaps about 20 years ago, and then it's kind of stagnated, and we haven't really been progressing from the dollars of output per dollars of input and productivity. In the last several years, automation technologies have become drastically cheaper, drastically more useful, like what Dereck was talking about. And we believe, and we're starting to see on the ground level, productivity starting to improve because of these. I'd like to hear if others are seeing that and where they think that's going from their individual businesses.
Yeah, I can talk on that one first. Oh, sorry, Laura, were you gonna go?
Oh, you go ahead. I'll go next.
I was just so I never would have thought that like Thelma could have an automation component, right? Like when you talk about that, you're like, Pella can do that because they can spend millions of dollars on a new line, and that's great. But we were in Chicago at the Pack Expo, I don't know, in the last 6 months, and it was like the robotics arm expo is what it really was. And like any tiny task that you can do, you can program it simply. You don't need this very high skill set. So like I think the impact is going to have is for the manufacturers who are like less than 10 employees, the little operators who now can have this pallet stacked with this arm. And we're going to start seeing that. It's just now, I think, is that where that price point to where, oh, I don't have to finance it. I could just pay cash for this thing, and it replaces, 25% of this one person's the payroll, or lets them do something else. So that's kind of how I've seen it play out and how we're thinking about it for the future.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pile on and agree that, the investments in automation, they can be big and complex and expensive, but they can also be small and rapidly scalable, especially when you're looking at digital transformation. We're spending a lot of time in the realm of Industry 4.0, smart factory, intelligent operations. There's lots of different terms for it, but once you get on the right track with how to add value, both for driving efficiency through your operations, making better decisions, but also making the work easier for your team members so that they want to stay and do those jobs, you can really start scaling pretty rapidly. It does take, specialized skilled talent in order to deploy these digital and technology solutions, but it's not overly expensive once you get on the right track with the types of solutions that add value. And we are seeing a significant uptick in productivity with the work that we're doing in both automation and digitization.
Just add, I think people are concerned about replacing people with automation. And I mean, it's a fair concern, it's a fair conversation to have, but what we have seen is that we're not going to be able to replace people with robotics, or at least in the near term, but the people that we need are going to be more expensive, more highly skilled people that we cannot, again, walk in off the street and train within 48 hours to be able to do these jobs. They're also a higher investment to get that person up and running to be able to, and I'm talking train and maintain the robot. So there's a lot of benefits that we can see, particularly in the expensive equipment that I mentioned earlier, being able to have that equipment run 24 hours a day because a robot can load and unload it. And obviously loading and unloading can be dangerous if not done appropriately. That's a great job for a robot to do. It's mindless and potentially dangerous. Those are great things, to have automated. But I don't think it's going to be the silver bullet for workforce concerns that we had all hoped, it might allow us to really leverage those things to negate some of these workforce needs. I just don't think it's going to be that, at least in the short term.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly agree, Megan, that we're not seeing dramatic replacements, right? It's really about making the work better and easier and more efficient and oftentimes safer to deliver better quality, and less about the direct replacements. We are seeing some cases of that, and it is important because we also know that there's going to be more manufacturing jobs than people to fill them, and so continuing to need less is important, but we're seeing a much bigger uptick in retention and then the efficiency of our operations through those automation efforts.
Well, I appreciate that conversation. And I just shared in the chat a link to an article that Mike O'Donnell shared from Mike Ralston yesterday. And it's about robotics and robotic hubs across the country. And it lists 5 states that are the top 5 states for robotic hubs, and Iowa is listed as number 1. I don't know if we want to have a real deep conversation about what that all means for the future of manufacturing. I think we've had a pretty good conversation about that right now, but let's segue into workforce challenges. And let's start with Megan. What workforce challenges are you continuing to experience, and how are you addressing those?
Yeah, so I would say things have gotten better in the last 6 months. We are not, and I think, at least some of it is media driven with employees, asking for more money or more vacation days or, other benefits before they will accept a job offer. But we're seeing less and less of that. We are having more people apply for our job postings, which is all of that is good news. We do still have quite a few openings, but that's a measure of growth, not turnover. So that's, again, good news, and largely because of that new building and to add more people. We are seeing or continuing to see issues with people just simply not showing up for interviews, not showing up for day 1 of work. So I can't take it too personal if they don't show up for day 1. At least it's not day 2, right? But that is, it does cause some strain, especially if you're, really hanging your hat on, we finally found somebody that's going to fit this particular role. Maybe that's a role you've had posted for a while, and then, they don't show up. In terms of what we're doing to try and address that, I mentioned our 4x10 and 3x12 shifts. Those have been really popular. The 4x10 we started last year because of gas prices. We were trying to give people a break on not having to drive to work 5 days a week. And when we announced it, we said this is temporary until gas prices go back down. And then it has been both popular and it's been working well. Our primary concern was obviously being able to support our customer who works, 5, 6, 7 days a week. But we've been able to do that with a skeleton crew on Fridays. And we're not hearing from our customer any impact, and employees really like it. Also, obviously when you go from an 8-hour workday to a 10-hour workday, one of the things we were really concerned about is, are we going to see increased safety issues? It's a manufacturing facility and we want people, on the top of their game. And if hours 9 and 10 don't allow them to do that, then we can't go to that type of a shift. We have not seen any uptick in safety. And I think, even though I'm working in an office environment, maybe you guys feel the same way, but kind of like when you get to work, a 7-hour day kind of feels like a 10-hour day. I mean, it all kind of feels the same. And we have seen that, I think, both attract and retain people who really like that new schedule. The 3x12s we started because we have those new lasers and it's a very expensive capital investment, and we thought, man, if we could get those running 7 days a week, how great would that be? We did not know if we would be able to fill those. They're either Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday positions, but they were full, within days of posting them, and we actually opened up more positions for that schedule. Interestingly, what we are hearing from several people is they've got a spouse who works a 4x10 and they're working a 3x12 and they don't have daycare costs anymore. And if that works for your family, that is a significant increase in your pay. So that's been really well received. I know there's a question in the comments about what we're doing for workforce needs. Those, I think, are generally some of the initiatives that we've done. But one thing that's been really successful for us, ever since we've been around, is just talking to our employees about, okay, let's say we've got a pot of money to make your life a little bit better. What would that look like for you? Now, 99% of our employees say more cash, period, end of story. Do not want to hear about any other benefits, but, and that's fine, and that's a fair answer. But we have tried to get, a little bit creative about other things that we can offer, in terms of, EAP programs, better 401k matches, gym memberships. We started a residency, incentive this year, where if you don't live in Knoxville, but you move to Knoxville, we give you $1,000 now and $1,000 a year from now. Trying to get people both to move into town and obviously be more committed to our community. I think it's 66% of our employees don't live in town. We're very, like most of our people that work here live outside of our community. So, and that obviously helps us too for both retention and, we live in Iowa. Those snow days are a real thing. A lot of people calling in, but the roads are not good and we can get them closer to home and reduce that too. So just throwing out some different strategies that we put in place.
And Laura, how is Pella addressing its workforce challenges?
Yeah, we certainly have a lot of overlap with Megan and the Weiler team. Focus on wage and benefits has been really important to us, particularly over the last year. Increasing wages, adding things like shift differentials. That's been really important and helped on the retention front. She also mentioned schedules. We've done the same. One of the things we found is creating options for our team members is important. We have some team members that want to work a lot of overtime and some team members that want to work part-time or want to work a very set and condensed week. And so have worked really hard to provide options for team members to get them into the schedule that works best for their family, and seeing some nice improvements from that. I've also done a lot of work on the retention front, focusing on more training and support, especially through that onboarding phase, making sure team members come in and can feel really quickly confident that they can accomplish their job, and also help them feel supported and connected to the broader team to build that engagement. So we've seen some nice improvements with that. I mentioned some of the technology work. At Pella, we call it heavy, fast, hard, but really starting to attack jobs and improving jobs that are hard to do, right? To make those easier for team members. They want to stay in those positions. That's been important work for us. One of the big things that we've worked on to help expand our pool of talent is really focusing in on the non-English speaking population. We have a few plants even here in Iowa who have been able to dramatically improve their ability to attract and retain non-English speaking team members by creating work instructions, providing digital solutions, really creating an environment in the plant that supports those team members in their native language. Huge swings, 30% swings in the ability to attract and retain those different populations. And that's been really incredibly helpful for us in order to fill jobs and create better business conditions for the team.
And Dereck, in an earlier comment, you said you've had one turnover in the past year, and that you really look towards ways to engage and your employees and make them feel like they belong. What other strategies do you use to really keep those employees in place and keep them motivated?
Yeah, so it's funny to hear the similarities between what we're all dealing with here, but we started this business and I had my first 3 employees were all single moms. And so I just sat down with them and I said, what hours do you guys want to work? And let's make that the shift. We'll just make it up right now. And so we did that. And so we worked, they all want to start early and then be done by 3:30. So they can pick up kids from school and do all that kind of stuff. And so this year with the automation change, with the expense of sanitation and changeovers and all that stuff, we had to switch to 410s. And some resistance to that, but we're starting at 5:30. And so still done in the early after, right around school let off time. And there was about a week's worth of resistance. I have a really fluid like all my employees can come into my office and complain to me about that, and they do. And so there was some resistance initially, but after we did it for a few weeks, everyone loved it. They could do all their errands on Friday. They have Fridays off. And I said, if we do this and we commit to it and we commit to our inventory management strategy and our production strategy, we won't work overtime. Because last summer, we could not keep up with our manual processes, and we worked crazy weekends and nights and all this stuff to try to keep up. And just a lot of burnout. Just people stuck around, but they're like, we can't do that again. We need some downtime. And so being just really respectful of that and saying, if you do your part, I'll do my part, and we'll win this thing together. And then the other thing was because we still have a lot of single moms who work here, and we're super flexible. Kids get sick, stuff happens. We're in this, we're regular humans. So even though the handbook might say this, this, and this, sometimes we have to be human and show a little grace and a little flexibility, and people respond to that, because if it's a hard and fast rule all the time, they have to have something that is flexible. So I think that's really helped us strategically keep those folks and have them just see the human side of how we operate.
Laura, I want to come back to you. We hear a lot today about keeping employees engaged, not only at work, but also in the community. What is Pella's strategy for keeping employees engaged?
Yeah, there's a couple things there that maybe I'd mention outside of work, right? So there's a lot of focus on volunteerism and outreach in the communities in which we work. We think it's really important that our team members are engaged and invested in the community and with each other in the community. So lots of focus on outreach and volunteerism. The organization in its entirety also focuses on investments in the community, really to support infrastructure that people want to move into the communities for. So it sounds similar to some of the comments that Megan made about attracting talent to the area. Within the confines of the work environment, culture is a big topic here. Our culture pillars are caring, learning, and results, caring for the team, caring for our customers, learning and giving grace to each other as we grow and evolve together, and then delivering those results for the organization. And so it's top of mind really in all of the work that we do. We also do an annual survey. We call it Your View Counts, but hear from our team members about some of the challenges that they're facing, and then put in action items throughout the year to really make sure that we're advancing, engaging, and delivering solutions that help them. Many of the things I mentioned with schedules and wages and benefits, those are directly based on the feedback from our team members through that listening mechanism that we deploy every year.
And Megan, what about Weiler and its strategy for employee engagement?
Yeah, so we actually rely heavily on our employees for telling us what they want that to look like. So for example, deciding what we donate to, we'll donate to whatever our employees ask for. So if it's like, I am coaching this t-ball team, will you sponsor this t-ball team? Yes, but if the t-ball team, we have a process where if they request a donation, we'll go through and are there any employees on the list of this? We want to support what is important to our employees. And so that is the process that we've gone through for that. And interestingly, because we're still a family-owned business and we have a charitable foundation, that's a part of our business, we have been very cognizant of not acknowledging donations to things in the community, just because it felt, self-serving to do so. But we heard from our employees over the last 4 to 5 years, hey, this big project is going on. Why aren't you guys putting any money towards that? And we are, we're just not telling you guys about it. And so we have done a complete 180 on that and have, now been much more transparent with our employees about the things that we do support in the community. We used to say, we never wanted our logo on things or whatever, again, just because it felt like self-serving because it is our family name involved. But yeah, we have, again, been hearing loud and clear from our employees that I would like your, if I'm going to spend 40 hours a week giving you my time, I'd like your name on the back of that t-ball shirt or whatever. So we have been trying to hear those requests. We also try and do things like Next week, we've got a whole crew of folks going on company time to assemble playground equipment at one of the local schools. Things like that. Again, that's not something that we decided, hey, this is a good idea. We had an employee come whose kids go to that school. They have a need. We have people that turns out put things together for a living. We can do that, no problem. So things like that, where we have a specific skill set that we can, make the community better. We try and really dial those things in.
Mike, I want to bring you into the workforce conversation here briefly. Tom, let's talk a little bit about like labor force participation and what the uptick in that number could mean for manufacturers who are looking to fill open positions.
Yeah, labor force participation is a really interesting thing. It has been going down and will continue to go down. And that's mainly because of the baby boom retirees. There's not a lot we can do about that overall. I think the trickiest thing is, getting the right employees back in, and that's what everybody's been talking about. I think manufacturing, especially as we're getting that more technology, and we heard this today, is going to be struggling a little bit to find the right employee. And I think we'll see some things where you have more specialized skills needed and a little bit more knowledge needed in some of these positions than what used to be thought of as a traditional old-fashioned manufacturing job. And that's where we seem to see the biggest problem, I think, going forward. We've seen a lot of talk about that with the new semiconductor plants that are trying to be built and things like that. Questions of, it's great, we're going to spend a bunch of money to do this, and we need to do that given the supply chain challenges and everything. As a country, we have a lot of money invested into that. But there's an extreme worry about a lack of workers in terms of being able to come in with the skills necessary. And I think that's the transition of what a new manufacturing job looks like compared to traditional 20, 40 years ago manufacturing jobs. So in terms of participation, that's a really tough one to change. I see that number going down. All the forecasts for it continue to see a slide in that, and it accelerated a little bit with the pandemic is what happened, and that's kind of where I think we'll continue to see.
And yeah, Mike, I saw you nodding your head in agreement with some of the things Tom was talking about. So let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, and I think the big long challenge here, right, is Tom mentioned the baby boomers exiting the workforce. There aren't enough people to replace them, right? So from a population and workforce standpoint, it's going to get worse before it gets better in the vast majority of places here in Iowa and across the country. We've got a population gap that is not going to make fixing the workforce problems an easy thing to do. What you heard from all these panelists is really the best practice that you'll find out there is step back and listen to the people in your community, find out who the people are, and provide work that excites them. It makes them want to join. It makes them want to be part of your company. That works. It's really hard, right? So, you heard everybody talk about flex schedules and that kind of stuff as if it was just a quick decision. Putting together a flexible schedule that also works with a complex manufacturing plant is really, really hard to do. So the fact that they've kind of come out the other side of that shows that this isn't just a quick decision, but it's more of a really focused effort to find ways to make your place a great place to work and attract people into it. And that's the only thing that works, is being the best place in your area.
Tom, I'm curious if you could provide maybe, I know one of the things that came up at one of our recent events was the demographics of folks that weren't necessarily getting back in the workforce. And one of those was actually male. And Michael, you might need to help me here. I think you wrote up a little item on it, but males 25, 35, somewhere in that range.
Something like that, yeah.
I'm curious if you have any information about that or anything that might be of interest for folks as they're looking at how to target different groups that for employment.
I don't have a ton right off the top, but you are right. I've heard a lot and seen some stats in the past on this, that it is a changing group and not the group you would normally expect of leaving and not coming back outside of the retirees. And we know the retirees and the baby boomers, but it is a changing composition in that case. And you would think that some of those working age, especially prime individuals, 25, 35, and I don't know what has caused that. And it has been a strange male versus female thing too, that you're seeing more males probably leave than we would have expected.
Interesting.
So Go ahead, Chris.
One more on workforce, and Tom, I'm not sure if you have, you mentioned kind of just in general demographics working against us. Any other outlook into what we might expect as we're kind of looking forward as far as employment and workforce?
Yeah, overall in terms of workforce and broad employment trends and the things is what you're thinking, Chris. Yeah, I think, Mike's made a great point. Is this isn't going away, and that creates this different economy question again for us. You hear about, we're gonna have a slowdown, but you see low unemployment and people struggling to find workers. But it really segments by the portion of the economy we're looking at. Lots of industries have that problem, but then we also have people who can't find work, but they're not skilled. And that's where education really gets to be an interesting thing. And I think we need to think a lot about that. I know that we have been at Dereck also in terms of what does that look like in terms of trying to get people qualified for the new jobs going forward, and where do you find those folks? I think DMAC has a big sense. I was happy to hear you guys are doing stuff with DMAC in terms of getting people back into trades and things that are going to help in more than manufacturing. But even that isn't what the old trade looked like, right? Because you come begin with a much more advanced skill set in terms of some knowledge you're going to need to run some of those machines. And so I think being able to find that group is the really tough part, and that may involve some increase in training and onboarding that changes what you do. And I think that's an interesting question for folks in terms of how much you have to invest in that to get the right workforce. I was really happy, Laura, when you said that you invested in getting some folks that are non-English speakers. I think that's a huge change. It's something we were fighting with as a nation, is the immigration question. And one of the ways to solve some of our workforce challenges is to be able to allow more folks to come in who have the skills and are going to be good workers, because we're going to have that to have the right workforce going forward. And so we need as a nation to try to figure that out and figure out how to do that better than we are.
Before we move on with some other questions, there was a question in the chat, actually a couple of questions regarding how our benefits and expected to change, and how our companies dealing with the increased costs of healthcare as they address these workforce challenges. Laura, would you like to discuss that for a moment?
I guess what I would say is, we expect that, pay and benefits we're going to continue to see pressure on pay and benefits, and staying competitive is going to be incredibly important. So it will continue to be a focus for us as an organization. We're going to have to continue to get more and more efficient to make sure that we can afford those competitive benefits and wages. But we know that it's critical. One, you have to be competitive in that space, and then you have to make it a great place to work. And that's how you keep your employees. So we know it's important, and it's going to be a point of focus for us as we move forward.
And Megan, would you like to address that question?
I fully agree with what Laura said. It's going to be pressure on us as a company to become more efficient to absorb those higher costs, especially in healthcare. I mean, those costs continue to increase, and we cannot pass even keeping the same amount of contribution for the employees. Those amounts get to be an amount that we don't feel comfortable asking our employees to pay for healthcare premiums. But something that we have done to, and so what I mean by that is that the company picks up extra percentages because those increases become so out of hand. We have made a concerted effort and are making a concerted effort in this upcoming renewal as well to really double down on our education for preventative care. We're seeing just not as many of our employees as we would like take advantage of preventative care, which we know has an impact on healthcare premiums and obviously on the health of our workforce in general. So we're trying to kind of marry, without being too big brotherly about it, trying to marry some of that benefits that, they're already paying for and we're paying for as a company, but not necessarily taking advantage of, really encouraging them to do that. Especially with the 4x10s, they have that day of the week that they can go take care of some of those appointments too. And hopefully they'll take advantage of that.
And Dereck.
Yeah, so I think for smaller manufacturers, sometimes you hit these upper limits where a position can only the compensation can only go to a certain point because we can't afford the next automation thing. So it really pushes on to those other things that we talked about, of the flexibility and the non-cash ways to increase retention and attract employees. I think those are the pressures that we feel, and we just have to add creativity. I mean, that's bringing in the marketing team, that's bringing in the sales team. Like it's making it feel like a family environment, because that's what's going to be our strategic advantage when we don't have the extra money to just continue to increase compensation.
And Dereck, let's keep you on for a second. How is Thelma's addressing AI and the adoption of its use?
Well, that's fun. You think I know about AI because I make cookies over here. Yeah, so almost everyone on my sales team has ChatGPT tab open on their computer all the time. We're using so I would say we're using it more from a sales and marketing perspective than we are from a manufacturing perspective, just because at the scale that we're at, it's more applicable for that. Using it for content for social. We wrote a letter to a new distributor the other day, and I just plugged it into ChatGPT and wrote the whole letter for me. And I was like, oh, that's kind of nice. So little stuff like that for efficiencies. Certainly, what we will do is continue to find ways and keep testing it to find ways to better communicate our story to people, whether it's a customer direct to consumers or to retailers and things like that. And then to better understand what makes us different and unique in the marketplace, and using that as more of a communication tool right now than in our traditional manufacturing.
And Laura, how is Pella addressing AI and its use?
Yeah, it's certainly a big topic for us, something that throughout the business we're talking about regularly. How quickly that it's entered the market and become a really big deal. You know, we're early on our journey, but testing several things in support of manufacturing, really to help us predict when things might go wrong. So helping us predict when a piece of equipment might go down or a process might go out of control. Also helping us predict if something might go wrong through the production process, and will that impact a customer delivery date. And so we're certainly starting to embed and run experiments on how we can get more out in front of understanding when something might go wrong, so we can get even more proactive and less reactive when it comes to driving efficiencies through operations. So seeing some exciting results in early trials, but certainly really early in our journey.
And Megan?
We actually just finished kind of an experiment on this, which I think is kind of interesting. I'll try and keep it short, but we had somebody was interested in doing this again. I talked about how we make as much of this as we can employee-led, but it's something that they were interested in outside of work. We just said, can I experiment with this and see if this will make my job? So he put essentially a lot of different documents into ChatGPT and said, I need one that looks like all of these, but has these things that are different. And it came back in, you know, a half a second with exactly what he would have worked for several days on. But what he then had to do was go through and proofread all of that and make sure that all of that was actually accurate. You know, thankfully he had the foresight to do that. But his feedback on that process was that instead of doing a little bit of critical thinking and then a little bit of reformatting and critical thinking and a little bit of reformatting in his role, which is typically what his role is, it was all of the critical thinking part and none of the like kind of brain rest parts. And while I, as an employer, is like, great, that means you're freed up for all this critical thinking. From an employee perspective, he's like, I am exhausted. Like, instead of getting 8 hours of me, I think you've got like 20 minutes of me now, because I mean, there's just only so much that you can, I mean, you can't be on all day long, and your brain needs a little bit of time to do things like, you know, clean up your email, reformat this document, whatever that is. And so I just thought it was interesting feedback that yes, it may make that you may get to the end result faster, but are we going to burn out our employees in the interim? So yeah, we'll be continuing to kind of experiment with it and see where it makes sense for us, but just an interesting initial feedback on that project for us.
And Mike, I'd like to bring you into this conversation about how AI can be used in our manufacturing sector and kind of just generally what you think its future will be.
Yeah, so I did just drop a link to our recent news in the chat. If you jump to page 4, we had AI write one of our articles for us to show how wonderful and terrible some of these models are. Right there are clear mistakes in there. There are made up people. AI is not the answer to everything right now, but it is moving so incredibly fast. We're seeing so much value. The large language models are the ones that probably today have the coolness factor to them. But I think what Laura talked about in terms of predictive modeling for maintenance type things, for production efficiencies, that's where I think you're going to start to really see things start to move as you see more of the cheap sensors on the production floor generating lots of data. The downside is that stuff's really, really complicated. It requires an extremely strong IT team, extremely complex setups in terms of cloud processing, high-speed internet, which not everybody in Iowa has great speeds on this stuff. It's not easy, but it is going to be here for us, for good and bad, to stay. Everybody's dipping their toes into it. If you were to ask us what the number one topic people are asking us for information about, it's AI. That's the place that people are asking questions. We're also trying to get our arms around some of the best practices and how to use it. But like one of the things we're extra careful about is most of these tools are open access tools, which means if you put any information and data in it, it becomes, if you use that tool, their information and data that they can use for other things. So being careful about what you put in, those types of things, developing your own internal models is where we see a lot of things going, and we're going to see more movement there too.
Michael,
Tom, do you want to
Michael,
offer
I'm
any
pretty sure
thoughts?
I'm pretty sure you're gonna write the story from this one with AI. Is that the plan? Oh, did I stumble on your secret? All your reporting is using AI?
Oh my, yes,
Yeah, I thought so.
yeah, in fact, it's not even me here, Chris. This is some sort of
I thought so.
Tom, I wanted to offer you a chance before Chris jumped in to really address the issue of AI and in the manufacturing sector.
I don't know if I have a lot to add. I'm just thinking about you as a avatar or something there, Michael, not actually doing your job. Yeah, I think that AI is going to revolutionize things. And I think we heard a lot of the caveats and worries about it here. That this idea of that Mike said they wrote this, but obviously he had some problems with what they wrote. But I think that he hit the nail on the head when he talked about how it could change the way we process information and think about outcomes in manufacturing, thinking about ways things are monitored on the floor. It's a wonderful, brave new world. And back to that idea of having the right people to be able to understand the system and participate in that system, that's where it gets really, really tricky again. And so I think that's the big question.
Tom, let's keep you on for a few seconds. We had a question from one of the attendees. They were curious, for those who use bank financing, have they seen or had any negative impacts due to accessing financing? And we can go around the horn here, but Tom, I'd like you to really address that topic first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest obvious thing and there is that increased cost of financing. Where we've seen such a spike up in interest rates, especially on those short-term pieces. When you think about the inversion of the yield curve, that 2 to 5 window going up so much higher than the longer term in terms of rates. And so it really depends on if you're thinking about a short term or a longer term in terms of financing type of ideas. What we haven't seen yet is a lot of pullback in terms of the lending environment. We see banks still finding people who are willing to borrow and they're willing to make loans and not worried about a constraint on the credit. And so far, I don't think we have seen the rates have gone up relative to where they were, but where they were was so historically low. We've been able to absorb some of this. And so I haven't seen it as a big constraint yet. That could change, obviously. But I think it has created a little bit of a slowdown in some people's willingness to go out there and take on some financing, but not as much as maybe we expected.
Laura?
Maybe the only thing I would add is just, with the housing market being so tied to our business, we've certainly seen, because mortgage rates are high, interest rates for remodeling high, and the costs to do those jobs are high. We do think that's definitely contributing to the softening that we're seeing in the housing market, and do expect that to continue at least in the near term.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt there, but I agree that housing is one place we've probably seen the biggest impact of it. And I said that part of that slowed down overall, but on the business side, I haven't seen many people back off yet. So.
And Dereck, have you had any issues or concerns with accessing financing?
No, not yet. We, with the automation, we did a big round of financing for that. And then at an ongoing basis, we've got great banking partners and other shareholders. So no big inhibitor, but we're also very careful to buy stuff now, stuff, the interest rate is higher. And so we're just, can we bootstrap it with some other solution in the interim, or can we stretch what we have? We're having those questions, I would say, more proactively than when interest rates were 3% or something for business lending. So it's probably, subconsciously having an impact on how quick we are to just go buy stuff. But so far it's been okay for us.
And Megan, let's bring you into the conversation. Any sort of negative effects due to accessing financing?
Yeah, we are not using financing in the business, but we are hearing feedback from our customers that it's getting more and more difficult for them to obtain financing and for them to make the purchase make sense. Our equipment is, far and away the most expensive piece of equipment that they're going to own in their paving operation. Many of these are, literally mom and pop paving operations where, it's a guy and a 2-man crew, and, he owns the equipment. He goes around, he paves driveways, he paves golf cart paths, whatever work that they can find. And when that interest rate shifts even 0.25%, that makes a big impact on whether or not they're profitable. And then, those people who were maybe on the bubble of being a good risk or not a great risk for the bank, have kind of shifted to not being able to find financing as easily. Interestingly, on the business side, if they forego that purchase and keep their old Weiler paper, then, that helps our parts business because they're keeping in their older paper longer. So that's been kind of an interesting, tail wagging the dog a little bit, but we expect, because of the number of times that we have seen that happen, we expect our demand to remain good for the actual core product for several years, knowing that eventually they will need to replace that product.
So as we start looking towards the end of this this meeting and this conversation today, I'd really like to kind of go around here and have each of you kind of look into the crystal ball and kind of predict what the future of manufacturing in Iowa will be. Do you see it getting stronger? Are there areas within manufacturing subsets that you see performing better than others? Tom, let's go back to you.
Thanks, Michael. I would say that I think if you think short term and long term, I think long term is still going to obviously be a big part of the Iowa economy. I think the short term challenges are the ones we've talked about here today. And it really, to me, comes down to trying to figure out that path going forward with the broader economy and keeping an eye on how we are in this post-pandemic world, what that looks like. And so I would say the short-term challenges or the labor force challenges we've talked about, I think we've gotten a lot of the supply chain things improved, with the exception of the electronic side, where we still going to have some issues. But I see long-term manufacturing still being a strong part of the Iowa economy.
All right. And Dereck, where do you see the future of manufacturing in Iowa?
So I think for food makers, I guess I can speak on behalf of that because that's where I'm at, but there's a real strategic advantage for mid-sized manufacturers, like small manufacturers like us. Retailers are continually shifting to this kind of supporting local and regional brands and products, because it differentiates them in the marketplace from the big box stores that have a national only presence. So I think in Iowa's food making culture is really strong, and we have a lot of, you know, inexpensive commodities here and things like that that make it a really great place to do that. So I'm optimistic about Thelma's future and other small food manufacturers.
And Megan, your thoughts on the future of manufacturing?
Yeah, I agree. I'm also optimistic, and I think one of the primary reasons we have to be optimistic is the number of people who are looking at these issues on a state level and federal level, and are committed to seeing what needs to be done to improve the environment. And you know, we're not unique as a state in some of the issues that we have, but I do think we're some ways to try and address those. So yeah, I'm overall optimistic.
And Laura?
Yeah, I would echo what the other panelists have said. We're really bullish and optimistic about the future. I think it was really neat to see the alignment around just supply, inflation, workforce, technology challenges that we're all facing in a very similar way. So that was great to see. One thing that I was going to mention that we didn't spend a lot of time on today is, you know, especially in our case where we've just been flooded with really crazy high demand and backlog for the past couple of years. As we move forward, you know, we're really having to pivot focused in a softer market to gaining share and driving demand, right? Going and finding demand. So that's some newer focus for us because of the change in the marketplace as we move forward.
And Mike, what are your thoughts about the future of manufacturing in Iowa, and if certain subsets may perform stronger than others?
Yeah, I think I'm very bullish in the long term on Iowa manufacturing for lots of really good reasons. Food, machinery, right? Complex machines, those types of things. We are better than a lot of places in the country and the world at that at very reasonable costs. I think as you see more reshoring and more efforts from corporations to bring work closer to demand, we're really well positioned for that. One of the things we didn't really hit on that is going to be a factor in there is we've found this sweet spot of cheap energy costs while also having extremely high percentages of renewables. Our wind and solar are performing really well at low cost here. And so when you've got corporations who are looking to both satisfy stakeholders and find lower cost ways of doing things, I think we're really well positioned for some of that stuff. So when you're looking at those big investments over long term, I think there's more opportunities there too.
All right, thank you.
All right, well, we are just about out of time, but I want to give our panelists a chance to give a final closing thought. While they take a minute to think about what to leave you with today, I want to share just a few things with you as well. If you have any feedback about today's event, or if you have story ideas that you'd like to share with us that you think we should be covering and talking about, please feel free to reach out my way, or of course you can reach out to Michael Crum as well. In addition, our Made in Iowa edition of the Business Record is going to come out again. That'll be on September 29th. If you're interested, if you're a manufacturer and you produce a product here in Iowa and you'd like that product to be featured in the product, you can reach out as well. We'll have a link in the chat to allow you to do that as well. Content from today's event, we're going to be featuring the takeaways from this event will be in our in that edition on September 29th. We'll have video. We're going to have Mike will be writing about this in our daily e-newsletters as well. So of course, we'd encourage you to subscribe to Business Record, both as a member or for our free e-newsletters. You can always stay up to date with what's going on in the community. In addition, we have a few things coming up event-wise. If you enjoyed today's event and you enjoyed learning a little bit about manufacturing, our next event that we have will also be virtual. This is part of our Envision Iowa Think Tank series. We're going to be talking about business opportunities in the state. This is a great opportunity, again, to connect with people from across the state. We have some programming set up. Mike Ralston will actually be providing an outlook on what he's seeing in the community. You heard a little bit from him today. We also do a little bit of an interactive breakout session as part of that as well. So you get to meet people all across the state. On August 24th, we'll be talking about the office market. That's part of our Project 515 series. Mike will be right back leading that discussion so we can get an idea of what's happening in that sector of real estate and development. And then on September 7th, our final virtual event here of the summer. We like to keep it nice and virtual during this time, especially since these are all for across the state. Iowa Stops Hunger, we're going to be honoring 4 folks as part of our Iowa Stops Hunger program. Some really innovative approaches that they're taking to try to help fight hunger. All right, we've given you a chance to think. We'll go ahead now and give everybody a chance to give a quick final closing thought, and we'll just go right around the horn. So Megan, we'll start with you.
Well, I had mentioned a couple of times asking our employees what they want, what helps keep them here at Weiler, and we do the same thing for our customers. Obviously, ask them why they bought our equipment and what keeps them coming back, and we've taken that same approach for our employees to I think really good success. So we'll just leave you with that as something to consider in your own businesses.
Great, thanks, Megan. Dereck?
Yeah, I think it's constantly stepping back from the way you've always done things and take a look at it. And maybe there's something that you've walked by every single day, and there's a new way to approach it that is not wildly expensive. And then, like Megan said, listening to your employees. They just want a voice and to be able to be considered, and the retention that comes from that is significant. And one parting way is just when you're at the grocery store and you see a brand that's from here, buy that stuff. It helps. It matters to the little guy who started the farmer's market. And that really drives, when you think about how do you build manufacturers, it starts with little people, 5 people in their garage making stuff. So choose the local brand instead of the national guys.
Well, and I can attest it helps make your wife happy if you buy one of those at the store and bring it back. Mike, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think my ending comment is that we can try all we want to predict what next year is going to look like. We don't know. It could go up, it could go down, it could be the same. There could be something we have no idea what's next. Flexibility is key, right? And building that flexibility into your people, into your systems, developing people to see that change. That's the foundation that we need to be working from, and use that as our leaping point for responding to whatever comes next year.
And Laura.
Mike, you took mine. So I was actually just going to reinforce that. We all hope we know what's coming next year, but we really don't. I think building an adaptable and resilient workforce and operating model is incredibly important to adjust to whatever comes for us in the future. I also just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. It was awesome meeting and getting to hear from the other panelists and their manufacturing challenges. And I know we're at Pella excited to continue supporting manufacturing in Iowa and are really optimistic about the future.
And Tom, close us out.
Thanks, Chris. Well, first I want to thank the Business Record. This is always a great event, and all your events like this are fabulous. You guys are doing a great job. Absolutely, I was going to get a hit flexibility. Thanks, Mike. So I appreciate you getting it in on that. But I think that is it. In terms of looking forward, what does it look like? I think we will continue to see softness this fall. I think we're going to see a little bit of as everybody tries to sort through this. And I think that a lot of the talk recently about, it's going to be a safe landing and a soft landing, and that I maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're pointing towards that, but we'll see. But I think that flexibility was the big key there, because we don't know, and it is going to be a kind of maybe a little bit of a bumpy ride for the next 12 months as we figure this out. So.
All right. Thank you again. And thanks to our audience for attending. And Michael Crum, thank you for putting together a great panel today so that we could get a better understanding of the manufacturing industry here. We too are a manufacturer of sorts and work hard each and every week to produce the Business Record, print and digital products. And as a locally owned business, we're working hard to navigate some of the same challenges that our manufacturing friends are as well. When we think about printing costs and postage and all those fun things. So you can help ensure that we continue bringing you this quality reporting and events like this in the future. If you're not already a member, I'd encourage you and your colleagues to become one at businessrecord.com/membership. You get the weekly Business Record, and of course, feel free to sign up for our free weekly products as well. And of course, advertising helps support the things we do. So thanks again to our supporting sponsor, McKee, Voorhees & Cease, and to our presenting sponsor, ABI, for helping power today's conversation. You guys help power business, and you're helping power conversations like this. So a big thank you to them. And lastly, a big thank you to our panelists. We asked them to come out here and do their best to project what's going to happen in the future. They did a great job today, and we really appreciate that. So thank you to each of you. Again, I'm Chris Konetsky. I'm the group publisher for Business Publications Corporations. If I or our staff can ever be of any help, please feel free to reach out my way. We're always here ready to help. Thanks and have a great afternoon.